Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Brendan Jones, President and CEO of Blink, Hooman Shahidi, Co-founder and CEO of EVPassport, and Stephanie Rodriguez, National Director of Industrial Services at Colliers. They join us to discuss traditional versus next EV gen charging and providing the power to meet surging energy demand. It is great to have everyone with us. Welcome to Trade Talks, and let's go around the horn. Brendan, we'll start with you. Give us a brief overview of where Blink sits within the EV ecosystem.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks for having us, Jill. Yeah, Blink is a full service EV infrastructure service provider. We own and operate our own equipment. We sell our equipment. We build our own equipment. So we're fully vertically integrated. And we both sell our services out in the marketplace. So if a site host and all the variety of different site hosts has a need, we have a solution that we can provide them with, whether we own it, whether they own it, or whether a mix in between.
All right. And Hooman, tell us about EVPassport.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me. So EVPassport is an infrastructure as a service platform. We started the company in 2020, and since then operating in 35 states, 3 countries. And we're really focused on bringing that subscription model to the EV charging space, delivering a turnkey solution that handles construction, operations, maintenance, hardware, software, firmware, and the connectivity, and everything is proprietary to us. We manage that solution, and we have thousands of chargers on our network supporting under the IS network. So very excited for that.
Right. And Stephanie, tell us about the work you're doing at Colliers.
Sure. Thanks, Jill. Colliers is a global real estate services provider, and we partner with our investor clients who are developers or real estate owners and also occupiers of industrial space, distribution centers, manufacturing facilities, data centers. And this is a very timely conversation because the real estate sectors that we serve are seeing a big increase in demand for EV across the country.
Well, let's talk about that to kick off the conversation, some of the challenges that we're seeing within the EV space. And of course, charge anxiety, reliability with EV charging, Stephanie, is a concern. How important is charging reliability in EV adoption?
It's very important. It's very important to our customers who are considering putting EV charging capabilities into their real estate development projects. It's important to the occupiers who rely on that capability to operate their businesses. So it's a critical conversation, and the availability of power is a really big concern for a lot of people in many different cities.
If I can jump in and actually comment on that, because reliability is the reason why we existed as a company, right? I mean, we haven't been around for very long, but we came into the equation because reliability was the most important issue. And, one thing we noticed that now more than ever, there's a lot of, aging infrastructure, and that inhibits our ability to go out there and create reliable EV charging solutions. So the digital transformation moment that exists within EV charging infrastructure and partnering up with firms like Colliers and many others, I mean, is such a critical opportunity to serve these stakeholders. I mean, we really have an opportunity to look at what we do as serving the communities in which we're a part of, and reliability needs to be front and center. For us, we actually have a 60-second heartbeat and leverage artificial intelligence to tackle that, which is yielded a 99.7% uptime for us.
Right. And Brendan, of course, it's about installing the right chargers in the right places at the right time. Tell us about some of those solutions that you're working with.
Was that to me? I'm sorry.
Yes,
yeah. So, right charger at the right place is all about, you got to put a charger where the people want it, not where somebody else wants it. And to create a sustainable economic model, and even to add to reliability, you have to make sure that that charger is going to get the right level of utilization, has the right economic equation to do replacements and upgrades while that charger is in place. Putting it in the wrong spot is not necessarily good for the public. It might be badly lit. The quality might not be good. And that quality extends beyond the mere act of charging. Quality extends to where the charger is located, accessibility into that, whether it's in a dark garage. So we look at quality holistically throughout the entire customer experience and make sure we have the right charger at the right place for the right car at the right time.
Right. And Stephanie, it's about discoverability and interoperability if you want to address the charging reliability issues that we're facing right now.
Sure. we're seeing such an increase in the availability of charging stations, but when you're looking at commercial applications, I think a lot of the developers that we partner with and serve are looking at it as, is this just serving the occupier of the building, or is it also, available to the general public? So a lot of questions that need to be answered there. But with partners like Hooman and Brendan, it's one of those things where you kind of come up with a strategy together collectively and address it, as a team rather than just from a single perspective.
Right. Hooman, do we have enough power for all of the demand that EV requires? And when we're talking about EV, I mean, if you think about all the advancements that's being made with AI and the building of all these data warehouses and so forth, do we have enough infrastructure, enough power on the grid to be able to support all of these priorities and advancement in technology?
We do and we don't, but it's the opportunity that's in front of us, right? I mean, we raised $200 million last year to be able to use that to invest in the communities and build the infrastructure of tomorrow. I mean, that's really where, our model really shines, is we remove the barriers for EV adoption. We go out and build the necessary infrastructure in a smart, effective way. And it extends beyond just sort of looking at it and saying, oh, we're going to just connect to the grid, right? I mean, we're building the largest EV charging hub in North America. We're leveraging a microgrid and building alternative solutions that remove the reliance on utilities. So for us, we're taking a pragmatic approach that allows us to get creative with those key stakeholders. And like I said, and like Stephanie said, it's really important that we have those partnerships with folks like Colliers and CBREs and many others, because they're the ones that really understand what the asset holders are doing better than anybody else, and also ultimately the tenants that we serve. The other piece of the equation is, it's important for us to be integrated with the rest of the enterprise, right? I mean, we have an open API that gives us visibility into the entire technology stack that exists in a building, right? I mean, buildings are now smarter than ever, and the visibility we have into that entire equation takes a proactive approach on reliability. And beyond that, we get to manage the load. I mean, we have a solution called dynamic load balancing that leverages machine learning to be able to make sure that we avoid rolling blackouts and things like that. But it's really, the opportunity and honor of a lifetime for companies like us to actually go out and invest, millions of dollars into building the infrastructure of tomorrow, and to do it in a methodical way that's going to stand the test of time.
And to follow up on that, it's really a two-pronged issue. For level 2 charging, solutions that all of us are now developing or already have, like energy management, load curtailment, are providing solutions in microgrids, battery-backed storage. We're utilizing all those today to really create a healthy environment on the L2 side. And where those solutions haven't prevailed themselves, they are going to be over the next decade or so. Now, DC fast charging is another equation altogether. There's enough power from a production perspective in the US. That's not the issue. It's, can we distribute it? So the second phase that has to happen is we need a lot more collaboration with the utilities out there on improving the overall infrastructure, bringing power in to big sites that, may be distributing at a single charger 400 kilowatts. And that's where the big question is. And, but there's solution there, but we can't get lost in the overall dynamics. DC fast charging is the bright shiny object in the EV infrastructure, but it's really only 10% of the solution. 90% of the solution, as we've just both alliterated here, we're working on that. We have good software, we have load management, so we can achieve that 90% goal while still working on better solutions for DC fast charging, not how to get the power in the middle of, let's say, Montana, where there's more horses than people.
Right. So Stephanie, utilities and regulators are going to have to get creative to expand the nation's overloaded power grid as a result. Do you have any examples where you're starting to see that collaboration or them thinking more creatively as it comes to private and public partnerships?
Yeah, sure. We see it quite often lately, just because like my two colleagues who are on this call mentioned, it seems like technology, whether it's EV charging, data centers, things like that, are progressing much more quickly than the distribution of the power we need to supply to those different components of our day-to-day living now. In Portland, There's an example, and this is data center related, but a project is being developed. It's going to be powered in large part off the grid with high-tech fuel cells that convert natural gas to low-emission electricity. We're seeing examples of another project in South Texas that won't rely on the grid at all. Instead, it will be using geothermal energy by drilling deep into the core of the earth. So there are a lot of end users and a lot of private entities who are kind of looking to how can we solve to the fact that the utilities can't seem to keep up with the distribution demand that's at bay right now.
Yeah. And Hooman, let's talk about this concept of future-proofing businesses and the benefits of next-gen EV charging for businesses. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it starts with our fundamental belief that if you create incredible experiences at great value, you could arguably change the world. But great experiences really are a product of a platform experience that removes complexity in any solution. And I think for us, what is really important to note is that we believe that hardware is a commodity, right? We think that the hardware equation within EV charging, is a commodity that will, the costs are going to continue to go down. So really, it's about the software, it's about the firmware, it's about the reliability. That's really what's going to drive the adoption and create creative solutions. For us, we believe that creating a subscription model that removes all those barriers and says, hey, you have one-stop shopping is really critical because, as you know, asset holders have a lot going on. There's a lot of challenges, in front of them, and they're looking for smart ways to deliver ancillary income. For us, we deliver a solution that gives them over 70% of revenue, right? And in commercial workplace, for example, that is a really important opportunity. I mean, there's over $1.8 trillion in debt coming up next year within the commercial workplace, and coming up with new solutions to get people back into the office, for example, is a creative way for them to generate income, but also to get folks back in. Beyond that, it's about making sure that integration exists, right? How do we create an opportunity to say, okay, well, this necessary piece of infrastructure is integrating with the rest of the way we live, work, and play.
So, Brendan, would you say, despite the headlines, that there are still growth opportunities within the EV space, and this is more of a recalibration of what's happening in the industry right now, despite what we're seeing in the headlines where, hearing of factories closed here and car dealers shifting their models around? Is it really more about a recalibration versus growth is halted?
Well, yeah, and some of the data is already recalibrated. McKinsey, I'll cite one study a year and a half ago. They're going out with 30 million chargers need by 2030. They revised that to 28. So, okay, it's 28 million now, which is still, the US only has 4 million in the ground. So that's a massive market. So the growth is going to be there. There's this year has some minor headwinds in, but over time, and we have to talk about the good stuff. California ended up at 25% EV pen rates as a percentage of new vehicle sales. Europe, it's at 30%, and we operate in both areas. The growth is going to continue. China's already there. Europe is heading, and the United States will get there too. We might hear some politics. We might hear some groups trying to slow us down. We shouldn't think that oil and gas is going to go away quietly in the transportation section of the United States. So this is part of the problem, but we have to keep evolving, and we have. When I started, and I've been doing this since 2008, the argument is, did you need more than 110 charging for an electric vehicle? Well, now we're putting in megawatt chargers throughout the country. So we keep evolving. We have to keep, as an industry, upgrading our equipment and taking care of quality. And we believe strongly that the owner-operator model and models in which the site host is responsible and takes a degree of interest in the charging. And we also believe that you have to get out of these cycles that you have manufacturers engaging in built-in obsolescence, because that's where a lot of the quality is built in. They want the sales turn as opposed to the quality and longevity. And that's why, as an owner-operator, we don't produce anything that doesn't have 7 to 10 years in its lifespan, because that just adds to the problem. Do not build in obsolescence for a quick sales rate. And that's where a lot of the quality issues come in.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make. And Stephanie, to, the point that you've made in all your notes is this isn't just about EV. When you think about AI, data centers, and all the demand that's coming just from that, it's not something that we can drag our feet on because, I don't think it's necessarily, it's only electric, it's only this particular type of technology, but a portfolio of technologies and energy to help advance this forward.
That's absolutely right. Between data centers, the uptick in chip manufacturing across the US, EV charging, there's a tremendous demand on power resources that we have in this country. And it's going to take another collective approach to try to figure out how to solve for that. Hooman said it earlier, it's the distribution network that needs to be upgraded, that infrastructure. It takes time and it takes a lot of money. So there are billions of dollars that need to be invested in order to support this growth in the technology sector that we're seeing. So, I read a statistic recently that data center energy demand is expected to nearly double to 32 gigawatts by 2029. That would mean adding roughly 13 new nuclear reactors to power that kind of demand. And that's just for data centers to kind of support the AI that we're seeing, just really booming right now. So there's a lot of, there are a lot of things to consider, not just EV charging, but the data center demand, manufacturing chips, which is also, all of us on this call, see semiconductors being needed in our day-to-day business operations. So it's going to be interesting to see how the utility companies can help and if private entities are more able to quickly and nimbly come up with some solutions.
And to tack on to that, I think it's, now more than ever, it's really important for us to educate the public around what's going on, right? I mean, so often people ask me, well, what's the greatest challenge in front of us for EV adoption, for this critical piece of infrastructure? It's really around enablement. It's around educating the key stakeholders of what it takes to actually build the effective and smart communities of tomorrow. And, something as simple as how do you plug in, right? I mean, where do you put these chargers? Why do they matter? I mean, how much energy do you use? I mean, these are the things that we have to do. And that's where the public-private partnerships really take flight. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Washington. I think the current administration's done a great job of educating folks, but we need to continue to invest those dollars in enabling how we can, make sure that people know what matters, what's at stake, and what that process is, right? That's how we're going to remove the barriers for EV adoption. I think some of the headwinds and the headlines that you see, right? I mean, we just saw Hertz say, oh, well, we're sort of pulling back on EVs. Well, I mean, it would be the equivalent of all of a sudden the four of us decided to play in the Stanley Cup, right? You're not prepared to go play in the Stanley Cup. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of effort and energy, no pun intended, right? To go and play in the Stanley Cup. And so you can't make bold statements without actually investing into the infrastructure and taking the necessary steps and protocols to get there. Because when you arrive there, that's how you're going to drive effective long-term utilization, long-term adoption. And that's really the holy grail in all of this.
Well, go ahead, Brendan.
Yeah, what we focus on is let's flip the dialogue. Look, for every challenge we face as an industry, we have so many more opportunities that are providing to this country. So there's nothing wrong with energy independence, that our transportation sector, our buildings now, we're energy independent. We don't have to rely on foreign oil or conflict regions to deliver our energy solutions. The second part is there's no question this movement is about job creation and it spins out. We talked about chip manufacturing. We talked about creating microgrids. We talked about all sorts of these are new high tech. It's a job creator as we transition this country moving forward. So the positives are enormous. And we're not getting into the environmental benefits yet. We can just put those aside. The country can continue to benefit from this technology revolution as we move forward, and we need to embrace it. It's like I love the Hertz example because the reality of the Hertz example had nothing to do with EVs and everything to do with vehicle residual value. And Hertz economic equation was blown out of the park because Elon Musk dropped the price of the vehicles and they had no value on their books anymore. It wasn't that they couldn't figure out a way to get it done. They had to get them off their books because that's the rental car model. But everything is spun to the negative. instead of the positive in this space sometimes. And we really got to let people come in there. They have to unpack it and say, hey, the industry is moving forward and it's a good thing.
All right, Stephanie, final thoughts here.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask my two co-panelists if they've been involved in any of the conversations in California. They recently, in 2020, they passed a new regulation stating that buses, heavy vehicles, and locomotives needed to be, going to electric by 2045, I believe it is. And then they talked about the green charging highway on the West Coast. Is that attainable, do you think?
Well, so considering the fact that I'm reporting live from Santa Monica, I think it is, right? I mean, we're proud to call California our global headquarters, in Santa Monica. But for us, really, I think it is attainable for three primary reasons. One, because California has done a great job of driving that adoption. Two, this is the West Coast, is really setting the tempo for alternative environmental solutions. Not to say that the other parts of the country are not doing that. We're seeing great growth rates and adoption in Texas and Florida. Northern Virginia, we're seeing lots of adoption there, the Northeast corridor. But California is really setting that wonderful tempo. The other piece of the equation is there's more innovation. I think this sector really is not just about product innovation, but about business innovation. How do we create smart solutions in a way that drive great experiences? And California is getting creative about that. You can be critical of the politics in one way or the other, but at the end of the day, there's a real story around revenue, cost, and cash flow for the constituency of California.
I don't think I can add anything to that. He said, put it this way, 25%. Okay, is the EV penetration rate in California. Right. Everyone is going to be a fast follower. Oregon and Washington State are right behind, and the East Coast in certain pockets is picking up there as well. They are going to continue to lead. Now, there might be some controversy around some of the policies, but that's okay. That's fine, and we'll work that out. But definitely they're the leader, and we need to follow them. And a lot of states have adopted their